And a man who is no stranger to the Observer, veteran journalist Ken Ali and his great writing. Pleasant good evening to you, Mr. Ali.
Good evening to you, Mikey, and your many viewers and
Yeah.
listeners.
Ken, straight to the meat of it, the Dragon gas deal. Trouble?
Yes, trouble. It always was sitting on a knife's edge. You remember when the deal was finally negotiated, the Prime Minister said it was a saving grace and how important it was. And it was a matter that was always sitting on an edge because they weren't sure if it would be confirmed and so on. Now, it was, they were able to negotiate monetizing it after the United States lifted its economic sanctions on Venezuela, because Venezuela President Maduro promised the Americans that they would have free and fair presidential election this year. Now, there was always that fear. I remember Juan Guaido, what they did with him and prevented him from taking office and so on. The opposition presidential candidate is a lady named Maria Corina Machado, very qualified and competent lady. Well, the Supreme Court, which is really under the thumb of President Maduro, there are no free and independent agencies in Venezuela. They ruled last weekend that she was not eligible to take part. So we expected that. Now, that puts into place a train of events that could lead to the Dragon gas being torpedoed. The Americans have already indicated that Supreme Court ruling was Friday, but as early as Saturday, the U.S. State Department was already stating that they will review the economic sanctions. In other words, they would reimpose them. Well, a number of things have happened since the U.S. Vice President has spoken and the U.S. State Department have spoken, and they have said that they will reimpose some sanctions, but they did not add oil and gas to that. So as we speak now, there's no word on what happens with respect to the Dragon gas, but that's expected because that's the mainstay of the Venezuelan economy. And if you want to hurt the Venezuelan economy, that is where you got to go. Now, what they've said, they have given Venezuela, meaning President Nicolas Maduro, until spring, which, you know, the Americans like to talk in seasons and so on, which is really 2 or 3 months away, to permit free and fair election. That election is due this year. And if not, they will impose the sanctions. So thinking forward and looking ahead, it looks like that Dragon gas deal could be in trouble because the Americans are likely to restate the economic sanctions. When you do that, there's no way to monetize this. So we go back to square one. The implications of that are, as we all know, our natural gas production is at an all-time low. We have half of 3 water point liters in trouble, LNG, and so on and so forth. We are a gas economy more than we are an oil economy. As I said, and as I wrote, this is a mainstay that the Prime Minister is hoping when he goes to the electorate to say, listen, we've had hardship over the last few years, but now we have the Dragon gas field. The Dragon gas field has 4.2 trillion cubic feet of gas, which of course will assist us for generations. You'll be able to crank back up all those plants and permit other plants to come on stream. So the long story short, Mikey, it does not look good. We put all our eggs in that basket. And you know, I've been talking to energy experts, and they're saying that in addition to that, putting all our eggs in this one basket, the government has not awarded deep water exploration deals, at least not in a timely manner. So we have no other deep water exploration expected within the next 3 years. So all of that, you understand the dark implications of all of those things.
No, but we do have an update where, of course, the U.S. saying that they won't renew licenses for Venezuela oil and gas. The U.S. said it will not renew General License 44, which provides relief to Venezuela's oil and gas sector, following the Venezuelan Supreme Court's decision to uphold a ban barring the presidential candidacy of opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, unless all candidates are allowed to take part. So, based on that update, Huh?
Yeah, the events are turning very quickly.
Very quickly.
Yeah, very, because we don't, within hours, a lot has happened. And you see, even worse, President Biden took that decision. If President Biden were to lose the election in November and President Trump comes in January, he will be even more stringent with the Venezuelans, because he was very strong on supporting Juan Guaido. Remember, at a State of the Nation address, he put Guaido there, and he's strongly in favor of him. So even more problems for Venezuela. And another implication of all of this is, Mikey, Venezuela had a population of 28.2 million. Officially, the United Nations, these are not figures I'm plucking from the tin air, the United Nations have said that as many as 7 million people have fled. Many of them went to Colombia and Peru and Brazil and so on. Some went to the United States, some went to Canada. And as we know, many have come to Trinidad. And we have not had a proper system of getting them into the school system, medical care, and so on. I see, and many of your viewers and listeners too would see many of them begging on the streets. Some are in the informal sector, some are being exploited, and then victims of trafficking and all that.
But let me ask you this. You made a point earlier. I mean, if it is that we've pegged our economy to this deal that simply seems to be in shambles or in some sort of trouble, then what is going to happen to our economy? Because a lot is riding on this. You hear time and time again, the administration would come out and say, listen, Dragon Gas deal, this is where we've reached. Now, let's put things in right perspective, first of all. If you have companies like Shell, these are not play companies or toy companies. They have shareholders. And these shareholders have to make key decisions. And these key decisions, of course, will be that the money that is spent and invested, there must be a return, and hopefully a greater return than what's going out. If there's no stability politically and socially, why would any company put their money there if there's no guarantee of getting that return?
Let me say two things in response to what you just said. One pertains to Shell, and the other one pertains to the Prime Minister, who is now in the United States. One, Shell is the drilling company, but Shell did not confirm startup dates and all the other official things. And there were always concerns that Shell did not do it because Shell realized how volatile the circumstances are in Venezuela. So it didn't want to begin to make that investment and do all of these things and then find Maduro backtrack on his commitment, and then Venezuela and the Americans reimpose the economic sanction. That's the first thing, because I was keeping eyes on what Shell was doing or not doing. That's the first thing. The second thing, the Prime Minister has held talks in the State Department and so on. And these talks, today I was watching the American press conference, and they acknowledged these talks took place and so on. But they're in broad sweeping terms, and they talk about security, economic security, and so on. And the Prime Minister would come back, anticipate he would come back and say that we are holding talks on that, and the door is not closed, and those sorts of things. Right. The Americans are committed to helping us with security, but I don't think they're going to make, and let's hope, as we all Trinidadians, that they make an exception for the Dragon Gas deal, but one can't sit back and anticipate they would do that. If they impose these sanctions on Venezuela, well, the downstream of all of that will be what is going to happen, including, of course, the Dragon Gas. So while the Prime Minister may return and offer some hope, that is not founded on any facts.
Yeah, and that hope, of course, I mean, just, false hope, when in fact that we have to look at raw reality. The raw reality is that is there any money? Are we generating any revenue? You hear about the fact that contractors cannot be paid. The government was unable to hand out food cards over the Christmas season with money on it. There was a problem with that. Again, people are crying out for money. People are waiting. Some people in URP were sent home with less than $400 for Christmas. And of course, we're hearing that a lot of the money was taken to make up the back pay for those who were promised back pay for Christmas, and yet still that hasn't been done. People took 4%, and yet still the 4%, it doesn't seem to materialize whatsoever. What's going to happen?
very crucially, Mikey, is that our law enforcement officers or police officers have not gotten their back pay yet, and they are concerned. I've written about that also, that some are threatening to take sick-out action at Carnival, which is the biggest challenge and assignment every year. So as we are operating in a deficit budget, and there's another matter pertaining to this 4%. You know, Mikey, we lost the president of the industrial court, a lady named Deborah Thomas Felix. They did not renew her contract, and she was an eminent jurist, very, very competent president of the industrial court. Well, they were hearing this matter with respect to the public officers and 4% and so on. My sources told me that, and I have to say this very guardedly, there were jurists at the industrial court who wanted to give a 9% increase, and certain people took that quietly to the government and so on. The contract of Mrs. Thomas Felix was coming up for renewal. They did not renew her contract, very interestingly. So, you know, this 4% goes back to the year 2014, and you know the cost of living has gone up many, many, many times since then. So, but the short version of this, I know we went off on a side issue there, but Mrs. Thomas Felix may well have lost her job because she stood up for workers. So all of that points to the point you're making about the economic situation and inability to pay people and so on.
That's scary. Ken, I want to thank you so much for taking time out to link with us, and I will be following up on this, and keep up the good writing, and we are definitely learning a lot. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, and best wishes.
Appreciate that.